They looked me straight in the eye and said it. "We're too busy for your drama, Mom. Handle it yourself." My own children, the ones I raised, sacrificed for, put through college on a shoestring and a prayer. They couldn't spare a single afternoon to help me deal with a family crisis that was tearing my heart out by the roots. So, I did exactly what they told me to do. I handled it myself. I revised my entire will without breathing a word to anyone. And when they showed up 6 months later, demanding the keys to the lake house like it was already theirs, they found my estate attorney sitting in the living room, his briefcase open, legal documents spread across the coffee table like a declaration of war. The looks on their faces. I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. My name is Martha, and I'm 72 years old. I've lived my whole life in a quiet suburb of Chicago, raised 3 children pretty much on my own after my husband passed away when I was 45, and I worked as a school librarian for 33 years before I retired. Before we go any further, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your state or country in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this, and honestly, your support means everything to me. Now let me take you back to where this whole mess started. It was a Tuesday morning in March, gray and cold, the kind of day that seeps into your bones. I called my eldest daughter, Jessica. She's 48, lives up in Lincoln Park, works in finance, and is always busy. I needed to talk about something serious, something that felt like the world was ending. My younger sister Carol had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and I was completely and utterly devastated. Carol and I had been thick as thieves our entire lives. She was only 67, vibrant and full of life just a few months before. The diagnosis hit our family like a freight train. "Jessica, honey, I really need to talk," I said when she finally answered after my 3rd call. Her voice was clipped, distracted. "It's about Aunt Carol. Mom, I'm literally walking into a boardroom right now. The partners are all here. Can this wait? It's important, sweetie. She's very sick. And look, I'll call you this weekend, okay? I really can't do this right now." The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I sat there in my kitchen, the old phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone a flat, indifferent hum. Tears were already starting to form, hot and stinging. I told myself she was just stressed. Work pressure, you know. I try my son, Mike. He's 45, lives down in a suburb of Indianapolis, works in software development. We'd always had a good, easy relationship. He'd understand. Mike's response was somehow worse. "Mom, you know I love you, but you call about something being a crisis every other week. Last month it was your neighbor's tree falling in that storm. The month before that, it was the furnace making a funny noise. I've got 3 kids, a mortgage that's killing me, and my wife Rachel is barely speaking to me because I work so much. I can't be your 911 call every time something goes wrong." "Michael, this isn't about a tree or a furnace," I said, my voice trembling. "This is about your Aunt Carol. She's dying and I need..." "Then call hospice. Call her doctors. Call literally anyone else. I'm too busy for this drama right now, Mom. Handle it yourself. Handle it yourself." Those 3 words echoed in my head long after he'd hung up, a cold, sharp and final judgment. My youngest, Rebecca, we call her Becca, is 41. She lives in Ann Arbor, teaches at the university. She didn't even answer my calls. 3 times I tried. 3 times it went straight to her chipper, academic-sounding voicemail. I sat alone in my house that entire day just crying. Not just for Carol, though that was a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight on my chest. I cried because the 3 people I had devoted my entire life to couldn't spare 15 minutes to let me share my sorrow. I thought about all the times I had dropped everything for them, hell or high water. When Jessica's marriage fell apart 8 years ago, who drove up to Chicago every single weekend for 3 months to watch the kids, so she could go to therapy and get her life back together. When Mike lost his job during the 2008 recession, who cashed in a portion of her own retirement, the money my husband had left me, to pay his mortgage for 6 months so he wouldn't lose his house. When Becca had a complete mental breakdown during her PhD dissertation, who took a leave of absence from the library to go and stay with her in Michigan, cooking her meals and making sure she remembered to shower. Me. Every single time it was me. But apparently, I had become an inconvenience. My problems were drama. My need for a shoulder to cry on was too much to ask. Fine. If they wanted me to handle things myself, I'd do exactly that. The next morning, my eyes still puffy from crying, I called my estate attorney, Sam Fields. I'd worked with him years ago when my husband died, and my will had remained relatively simple ever since. Everything split 3 ways among my children. The lake house up in Door County, Wisconsin, the one my husband and I had bought 40 years ago and lovingly maintained, the place where we'd spent every summer with the kids, that was supposed to go to all 3 of them jointly. My savings, my retirement accounts, the house I lived in, all of it divided equally. Sam, it's Martha. I need to schedule an appointment, I told him. I want to completely revise my will. Martha, is everything all right? His voice carried that genuine old-school concern that's so rare these days. Everything's just fine, Sam. I just need to make some changes. Significant changes. We met that Friday. I walked into his quiet, wood-paneled office with a cold, hard clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't doing this out of spite. At least, that's what I told myself at the time. I was doing this because my children had shown me exactly how they valued our relationship. They'd made their priorities crystal clear. I want to remove my children as primary beneficiaries, I said, my voice not wavering in the slightest as I laid out my plan. The lake house is to go to Carol's daughter, Sarah. My niece has always loved that place, and more importantly, she actually visits me. She calls just to check in. She brought me a pot of homemade soup last winter when I had pneumonia, without me even asking. Sam didn't blink. He'd been an attorney for 30 years and had probably seen family situations far worse than mine. And the rest of your estate, Martha? I'm setting up charitable trusts. The local library system where I worked for 3 decades. The Cancer Research Foundation at Northwestern that's treating Carol. The women's shelter where I volunteer on weekends. My retirement accounts can fund scholarships for single mothers going back to school at the local community college. My house can be sold, and the proceeds split between these organizations. I took a breath. And my children are to receive $1,000 each. Just enough so they can't claim in court that I forgot about them, or that I wasn't of sound mind. I want it to be absolutely, unequivocally clear that this was intentional. Sam nodded slowly, making notes on a yellow legal pad. Martha, I have to ask. Are you absolutely certain about this? Estate decisions made in a state of emotional distress can sometimes be regretted later. I have never been more certain of anything in my life, Sam. They told me to handle it myself. So I am. Over the next 3 weeks, Sam and his team drafted everything meticulously. We included specific, ironclad provisions that would make contesting the will nearly impossible. I underwent a full cognitive assessment with a neuropsychologist to create a legal document stating that I was of perfectly sound mind. We even video recorded a session of me explaining my decisions, calmly and articulately, making it clear that no one had coerced or manipulated me. This was my choice, made with full awareness and unwavering intention. The hardest part wasn't making the decision. It was keeping it a secret. Every time Jessica called with some superficial chit-chat about her vacation plans for Italy, I wanted to scream. Every time Mike sent his obligatory monthly text, a simple, "How you doing, Mom?" I wanted to tell him exactly how I was doing. Becca continued to be mostly absent, popping up every few weeks with some flimsy excuse about being overwhelmed with grading papers. None of them visited. Not once during those awful months when Carol was declining so rapidly. I spent countless hours at her bedside, holding her hand, helping with doctor's appointments, managing her medications until she was moved to hospice. Sarah was there too, of course, my wonderful kind-hearted niece, who took time off from her nursing job to help care for her mother. We cried together, we laughed over old, silly memories, and we sat in comfortable silence during the hardest days. Carol passed away in late May, just 8 weeks after her diagnosis. The funeral was on a beautiful sunny Saturday morning. Jessica showed up late, checking her phone throughout the service. Mike attended but left immediately after the burial, claiming one of his kids had a soccer game he couldn't miss. Becca came but spent half the reception complaining to a cousin about her department head at the university. "This must be so hard for you, Mom," Jessica said, giving me a brief, awkward hug by the car. "Losing your sister." I wanted to say, you know what was hard? Calling you when I first found out she was sick and being told I was being dramatic. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Yes, it is." Hey, we should all talk soon about the lake house, Mike mentioned as he was rushing to his car. Becca and I were thinking maybe this summer we could all start using it more. The kids are getting older, and it'd be nice to have that family time again. The lake house. Of course. That's what they were thinking about at their aunt's funeral. Not about me. Grieving the loss of my only sister. Not about how I'd spent the last 2 months of my life watching her waste away. They were thinking about the property, the inheritance, what they could get. We'll talk later, I said simply. Actually, Mom, I've been meaning to bring this up too, Becca added, suddenly appearing beside Mike. Now that you're getting older, maybe it makes sense for us to start talking about your estate planning. You know, just to make sure everything's organized. For your peace of mind. My peace of mind. They hadn't cared one bit about my peace of mind when I was falling apart over Carol's diagnosis. But now that they wanted to secure their inheritance, suddenly my well-being mattered. Everything's already organized, I told them, my voice even. I met with my estate attorney a few months ago. It's all handled. Oh, good, Jessica said, joining the conversation. So the house and the lake property are all set up to transfer smoothly when the time comes? It's all legally documented, I replied. You don't need to worry about a single thing. They seemed satisfied with that answer, interpreting my words exactly the way they wanted to. They assumed all handled meant everything was neatly packaged and tied up with a bow for them to inherit. They had no idea what I'd actually done. Over the summer, their sense of entitlement only grew more blatant. Jessica started making plans for renovating the lake house, texting me pictures of modern furniture from Crate and Barrel and asking my opinion. She wasn't asking for permission. She was already treating it like her property. I think we should update the kitchen first, she wrote in a family group chat in July. Those appliances are from the 90s. Mike, you good with splitting the cost? We can talk about timelines once Mom transfers the deed. Mike responded almost immediately. Sounds good. Mom, what's the process for transferring the property? Do we need to involve lawyers or can we just handle it at the county office? Becca chimed in a few minutes later. Are we planning on selling Mom's house in Illinois too or waiting? Just thinking about timing with the current housing market. I stared at my phone, reading these messages in stunned disbelief. They were planning my estate distribution like I was already dead and buried. I was sitting in my living room very much alive, watching them divvy up my life's work and my most cherished assets via text message. I didn't respond to the group chat. Instead, I called Sarah. How are you holding up, sweetie? I asked. She'd been struggling with her mother's death, and I'd been checking in with her regularly. Some days are harder than others, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. But I'm managing. How about you, Aunt Martha? I'm okay. Listen, I wanted to tell you something. I've made some changes to my estate planning, and when I'm gone, the lake house is going to be yours. There was a long, shocked silence on the other end of the line. What? Aunt Martha. I don't know what to say. Are you sure? What about Jessica, Mike, and Becca? I'm completely sure. That house holds so many memories of your mother, of our summers together. You've always loved it, and you've always respected it. It should go to someone who values it for what it is, not for its market value. I'm honored, truly. But, won't this cause a lot of problems with your kids? That's my concern, not yours. I just wanted you to know. Please don't mention it to anyone just yet. When the time comes, you'll receive all the proper documentation. August rolled into September. The demands from my children intensified. Jessica wanted to schedule a family meeting to go over my finances. Mike suggested I should consider selling my house and moving into a retirement community to free up my assets. Becca started sending me links to financial advisors who specialize in senior estate transitions. None of them visited. None of them called to ask how I was coping with my first autumn without Carol. Every single conversation, no matter how it started, circled back to money, property, and their expectations. Then came October. I was spending a quiet Sunday afternoon reading when I heard cars pulling into my driveway. I looked out the window and saw all 3 of their vehicles. They hadn't told me they were coming. They had just shown up, clearly planning an ambush. Before I could even get to the door, they were walking in, using the old spare key I kept under a flower pot. Jessica first, followed by Mike and Becca. They had papers in their hands, actual printed documents. Mom, we need to talk, Jessica announced, barely offering a hello. I stood in my own entryway, watching my 3 children walk into my house uninvited, carrying legal papers they had prepared without my knowledge or consent. The audacity was breathtaking. Papers for what exactly? I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. Mike stepped forward, taking on the role of the reasonable son. Look, Mom, we love you, but we've all been talking, and we think it's time to be practical. You're 72. You're rattling around alone in this big house. Becca found a really nice assisted living facility not too far from here. I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Let me finish, Mike interrupted, his tone becoming patronizing. We're not saying you need it right this second, but eventually you will, and it makes sense to start planning now. These papers would give us power of attorney and allow us to help you manage your finances and properties. It's for your own protection. My protection? I repeated, the words tasting like acid. Or your convenience. Jessica's expression hardened. Don't be difficult about this, Mom. We're trying to help you. We've all talked to lawyers. You've talked to lawyers about my estate without even including me in the conversation? Because we knew you'd react like this, Becca said, her voice sharp and impatient. Getting all emotional and defensive. We're your children, Mom. We're looking out for you. Looking out for me? When was the last time any of you truly looked out for me? When Carol was dying, where were you? When I called you, heartbroken and terrified, what did you tell me? The room went completely silent. They clearly hadn't expected me to bring that up. That was different, Jessica finally said, her voice clipped. You were being overly dramatic. My sister was dying of cancer. I needed my children. And you told me I was dramatic and to handle it myself. So that's exactly what I did. What's that supposed to mean? Mike's eyes narrowed. It means I handled my affairs just like you told me to. Okay, yes, we probably could have been more supportive during that time, Becca admitted, though her tone suggested she was just trying to de-escalate the situation to get what she wanted. But this is about your future. About making sure you're taken care of. I am taken care of. Everything is arranged. Then it should be easy for you to sign these papers, Jessica said, extending the documents toward me. They just formalize what we've already been discussing. Transfer the lake house deed to the 3 of us now so we can start managing it properly. Set up joint bank accounts so we can help you with your bills. Get out of my house. They froze. Mom, Mike started, taking a step toward me. I said get out. I repeated, my voice rising. You come into my home, uninvited, with legal documents you've prepared behind my back, trying to manipulate and bully me into signing over my property and my finances. Get out. Now. You're being completely unreasonable, Jessica said, her voice rising to match mine. We're your children. Everything you have is supposed to go to us anyway. We're just trying to make the process easier. For yourselves. You're trying to make it easier for yourselves, not for me. You don't give a damn about me. That's not fair, Becca said, her eyes welling up with crocodile tears. We're busy, but we do care about you. You're busy. You're always busy. But you're never too busy to show up demanding my assets. Now leave before I call the police. They didn't leave immediately. They stood there, shocked that I was standing up to them, that I wasn't caving to their pressure. Jennifer looked at Michael, clearly expecting him to take charge and talk some sense into me. Michael looked at Becca, probably hoping she could use her gentle teacher voice to calm the situation. Mom, if you don't cooperate with this, we'll have to take further legal action, Jessica said coldly. We can petition the court to have you declared incompetent and have a guardian appointed. There it was. The ultimate threat. The mask had finally dropped completely. This was never about my well-being or my care. This was about control. This was about getting their hands on my estate while I was still very much alive. I walked calmly over to the phone on my kitchen counter. I'm calling the police. You have 30 seconds to leave my property. You're insane, Becca hissed. We're your family. Family doesn't treat each other like this. Family doesn't show up with legal papers to try and steal someone's property. Family doesn't threaten their own mother. Now get out. I started dialing 911. That's when they finally moved, gathering their papers, throwing angry, wounded looks my way. Jennifer stopped at the door. You're going to regret this. We're done trying to help you. The next time you need us, don't bother calling. I haven't been able to count on you for years, I replied, my voice steady. This changes absolutely nothing. They left, tires squealing as they peeled out of my driveway. I locked the door behind them, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and sat down in my living room. Part of me was terrified. Part of me was exhilarated. I had finally stood up to them. But I knew this wasn't over. Jennifer's threat about legal action was very real. I immediately called Sam Fields. They just tried to ambush me with power of attorney papers, Sam. They threatened to have me declared incompetent. Did you sign anything, Martha? His voice was sharp, focused. No, of course not. I threw them out. But they're going to escalate this. Good. Don't sign a single thing. Don't agree to any meetings with them alone. And document everything. Every text, every call, every unannounced visit. We need a detailed record. Over the next 6 weeks they tried everything. Jessica sent certified letters from her lawyer, claiming I was a danger to myself. Mike contacted my primary care physician, trying to get medical records that would support a competency hearing. Becca showed up at my house twice more, each time with a different strategy. First, she was apologetic and manipulative. The second time she was angry and accusatory. I documented everything, just as Sam had instructed. I had security cameras installed around my property. I saved every text message, every email, every nasty voicemail. They were building a case against me, but I was building a stronger one, showing their clear pattern of harassment and their overriding financial motivation. The nastiest part came in early December. Jessica posted a long emotional message on social media. Something she rarely did, about how worried she was about her declining mother, who was refusing help and making irrational decisions. She painted herself as the devoted daughter, struggling to deal with a difficult, possibly senile parent. Friends and distant relatives started calling me, their voices filled with concern, offering to talk to me about accepting help from my wonderful children. The manipulation was sophisticated and insidious. They were poisoning the well, creating a public narrative where they were the caring children and I was the problem. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated me. They assumed I was a helpless old woman who would eventually crack under the relentless pressure. They didn't account for the fact that I'd spent 33 years as a school librarian, dealing with difficult teenagers, manipulative parents, and complex administrative politics. I knew how to document, how to build a case, and how to stay 3 steps ahead. In mid-December, Jessica sent a text to the family group chat. We're coming up to the lake house this weekend. We've decided it's time to start using it properly since Mom is clearly not maintaining it. We'll need the keys. That was it. That was the moment I had been waiting for. They had finally made a concrete demand that I could use. I responded immediately. The lake house is not available. You are not welcome on the property. Jessica. It's our inheritance, Mom. Stop being so selfish. Mike, we're coming whether you like it or not. We have a right to access that property. Becca, you can't keep us out of what is going to be our own house. We're all beneficiaries. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Sam. They're planning to show up at the lake house this Saturday. They think they have rights to it. Perfect, Sam said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. I'll be there. Let's finally settle this once and for all. Saturday morning came crisp and cold. I drove the 3 hours up to Door County early, my heart pounding in my chest. Sam arrived shortly after, his briefcase in hand. We set up in the living room, the same living room where my husband and I had watched our children grow up during those idyllic summer vacations, where we'd played board games and roasted marshmallows and created the kind of memories that were supposed to mean something. We waited. Sam reviewed his documents while I made coffee, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Around 11 a.m., we heard vehicles approaching. All 3 of them had come, just as I'd expected. Jessica's SUV, Mike's truck, Becca's sedan. They brought their families too. I could see my grandchildren in the vehicles. They had assumed this would be a celebration. A fun family weekend at the lake house. They probably planned to change the locks after this visit, maybe even start moving some of my furniture out. I watched through the window as they all got out, laughing, carrying bags and coolers. Jessica was already on her phone, probably photographing the house for her renovation plans. Mike was pointing out at the old wooden dock, talking to his teenage son. Becca was unloading what looked like enough groceries for a week. They walked up to the front door. Jessica tried her key. An old copy I'd forgotten she had from years ago. It didn't work. I'd had the locks changed months ago, right after my first meeting with Sam. She knocked looking confused, then knocked again louder this time. "Mom, are you in there?" I opened the door. The expression on her face when she saw Sam sitting there in his suit, his briefcase open, legal documents spread neatly across the coffee table. I will treasure that moment for the rest of my days. "What's he doing here?" Jessica demanded. "Your mother asked me to be present," Sam said calmly. "Please come in. We have some things to discuss." They filed in slowly, their initial confusion turning to suspicion. Mike's wife stayed outside with the kids, sensing this was not going to be the happy family weekend they had planned. If you're still watching, make sure to subscribe to this channel. You won't believe what happened next. My children stood awkwardly in the lake house living room, their eyes darting from me to the documents spread across the coffee table. Sam remained seated, the picture of professional composure. I stood by the stone fireplace, my hands clasped tightly in front of me to keep them from trembling. "What is all this?" Mike asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "This is your mother's revised estate plan," Sam said, his tone even and direct. "She asked me to review the key points with all of you today, given your recent demands regarding her property." "Revised?" Jessica's face went pale. "I revised my entire will back in March," I said quietly. "Right after you all told me to handle my problems myself. So I did." Becca looked back and forth between Sam and me, her expression bewildered. "What are you talking about? March was months ago. You never said anything." "I didn't need to say anything," I replied. "You all made it very clear that my concerns weren't important to you. You were too busy for my drama. So, I handled my personal and legal affairs quietly, without burdening you with the details." Sam opened a folder and pulled out a set of documents. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "Martha has removed all three of you as primary beneficiaries of her estate. The lake house has been designated to go to Emma Patterson, her niece. The remainder of the estate, including Martha's primary residence in Illinois and all her financial assets, will be distributed to various charitable organizations and trusts that she has selected." The silence that followed was so absolute you could have heard a pin drop. Jessica gripped the edge of the coffee table as if she might fall over. "You're giving the lake house to Sarah? Our lake house?" "It was never your lake house, Jessica," I said firmly. "It was mine and your father's. We bought it. We maintained it. We paid the taxes on it for 40 years. The fact that you spent summers here as children doesn't make it yours." "This is insane." Mike's voice rose, his face flushing with anger. "You can't just cut us out of your will because we were busy when you called about Aunt Carol. This isn't about one phone call, Michael," I shot back. "This is about years of being treated like an inconvenience. This is about you telling me I was being dramatic when my only sister was dying. This is about all of you showing up here today, demanding keys to a property you don't own. This is about you trying to force me to sign power of attorney papers so you could control my money while I'm still alive. We were trying to help you," Becca shouted, her voice cracking. "Help me? You were trying to help yourselves. Every single conversation we've had for the past year has been about my estate, my property, and what you're going to inherit. Not once did any of you call just to see how I was doing. Not once did any of you visit just to spend time with me. Everything has been about what you could get." Jessica turned her fury on Sam. "This won't hold up in court. She's clearly not of sound mind. We'll contest it." Sam didn't even blink. "I anticipated that argument," he said calmly. "Your mother underwent a full cognitive evaluation by a licensed neuropsychologist in April. She scored exceptionally well for a person of any age. We also have video documentation of her explaining her decisions clearly and rationally. Additionally, I have detailed records of your multiple attempts to coerce her, including the power of attorney incident, and your social media posts deliberately questioning her competency." Mike's face turned a deep shade of red. "So that's it? You're punishing us because we didn't drop everything whenever you had a crisis?" You're still not listening, I said, my own voice breaking slightly with the sheer frustration of it all. I'm not punishing you. I am protecting myself, and I am honoring the people and institutions that actually care about me. Sarah was there for Carol. She's been there for me. The charities I'm supporting meant something important to me and to your father. These are my choices, made with a clear mind and a full heart. What about us? Becca asked, tears finally starting to form in her eyes. We're your children. We have families, we have expenses. We were counting on my death, I interrupted, the words sharp and painful. You were counting on me dying so you could cash in. Do you hear yourselves? You're not mourning the relationship we've lost. You are mourning the inheritance you've lost. Sam pulled out another document. In the revised will, each of you will receive exactly $1,000 from your mother's estate. That sum is legally significant, as it prevents you from claiming in court that she simply forgot you, or that the will was executed in error. It is a deliberate, documented, and legally sound decision. Jessica let out a bitter, humorless laugh. $1,000. After everything. After everything. I repeated, my voice shaking with 30 years of pent-up emotion. Let me tell you about everything. Everything is that I paid for your educations, every last dime. Everything is that I took care of you through every single crisis in your lives. From broken hearts to lost jobs. Everything is 30 years of birthdays and holidays and sacrifices you never even knew I made. And what did I get in return? I was told I'm too dramatic. I was ignored. I was treated like an ATM with a pulse. This is just revenge, Mike said flatly. You're a vindictive, bitter old woman. Maybe I am, I acknowledged, the admission feeling strangely liberating. Or maybe I'm just someone who finally learned that blood doesn't obligate me to tolerate being treated like garbage. You taught me that lesson. You all taught me that being busy is more important than being kind. That phone calls from your mother are interruptions instead of connections. That your mother's profound grief is drama, but your inheritance demands are perfectly reasonable. Sam stood up, collecting his documents and placing them back in his briefcase. This meeting is now concluded. The will is legal, it has been properly filed, and it is ironclad. Your mother is of sound mind and body, and she has every legal right to distribute her estate as she sees fit. I would strongly advise against any legal challenges. They will be expensive and, I assure you, unsuccessful. And they will only serve to further damage whatever relationship you have left with your mother. What relationship? Jessica spat, her eyes full of venom. She just destroyed any relationship we had. No, I said softly, my voice suddenly tired. You all destroyed it months ago. You just didn't notice because you weren't paying attention. You never paid attention unless you wanted something from me. They started to leave then, a silent, stunned procession of defeat. Mike grabbed Becca's arm, practically pulling her toward the door. Jessica walked out first, her head held high, trying desperately to maintain some shred of her shattered dignity. At the door, Becca turned back, her face a mess of tears and confusion. Was it worth it? Losing your children over money? I didn't lose my children over money, I replied, the truth of it settling over me with a profound sadness. I lost my children long before that. I just finally stopped pretending that I hadn't. They left. The door closed. The house fell silent. Sam and I stood there for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened settling around us. Are you all right, Martha? Sam asked gently. I nodded, wiping away tears I hadn't even realized had fallen. I am. For the first time in a long, long time, I actually am. Sam packed up his briefcase, giving me a moment to compose myself. You did the right thing, Martha. I've seen many estate disputes in my career, but I've rarely seen someone handle one with as much dignity and courage as you just did. I don't feel dignified, I admitted. I feel exhausted. That's normal. But you stood your ground. You protected yourself. That takes an immense amount of courage. He handed me his card. If they contact you, and they probably will, don't engage with them alone. Call me first. Document everything. And remember, you do not owe them any more explanations or apologies. After Sam left, I sat in the living room for a long time, looking out at the calm gray waters of the lake. This house held so many memories. My husband teaching the kids to fish off the dock, the smell of summer barbecues, late-night conversations on the screened-in porch, the sound of my children's laughter echoing through the pines. But those children had grown into adults I barely recognized, adults who valued my money far more than they valued my presence. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Aunt Martha, are you okay? Jessica just called me, screaming about the will." I told her I didn't want to be in the middle of this. I called her back. "Don't you worry about being in the middle. This was my decision and I stand by it. You have been kind to me. You were there for your mother when she needed you. This house should go to someone who loves it for the right reasons. I'm honored, truly. But I'm worried about you. Are you safe? Are they harassing you?" "I'm fine, sweetie. My attorney is handling everything. Now how are you doing? I know this must be incredibly stressful for you." We talked for an hour about her mother, about grief, about the slow process of moving forward. It was a reminder of what a real human connection felt like. It wasn't transactional, it wasn't conditional. It was just genuine care between two people who valued each other. The following weeks were quiet. My children did not reach out. There were no angry calls, no pleading texts, no attempts at reconciliation. They had shown me their true priorities, and now that those priorities had been denied, they had no more use for me. Part of me grieved that awful reality, but a much larger part of me felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I spent Christmas with Sarah and her family. We cooked together, exchanged modest gifts, and watched old black and white movies. It wasn't the big, chaotic family gathering I had once imagined for my old age, but it was warm and real and completely free of ulterior motives. In January, I received a formal letter from Jessica's attorney, threatening to contest the will on the grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. Sam responded immediately with our mountain of documentation, the psychological evaluation, the video testimony, the detailed records of their attempts at coercion. The legal challenge was formally dropped within 2 weeks. They knew they couldn't win. The lake house now sits waiting for Sarah, maintained and cherished. My estate will one day fund scholarships for young mothers, research into the disease that took my sister, and books for the library where I spent my happiest years. My life feels lighter now, unburdened by the crushing weight of children who saw me as an inheritance rather than a person. I handled it myself just like they told me to, and in doing so I reclaimed my dignity, my autonomy, and my peace of mind. Sometimes the hardest part of love is recognizing when it's become a one-sided transaction, and having the courage to stop giving to people who only know how to take. That's my story. Thanks for listening.